Okay, my phone has 7 o'clock. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. And I'm going to call this meeting to order. Tonight, we're going to end at 8:45. We're going to hold ourselves accountable to that time, and so that we'll have time for public comment after that. First, we're going to need a motion to take action on the minutes from March 26th, 2025.
So move to accept.
Second.
Right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Up next is BFJ. You're going to go over status of work and timeline, revised zoning, design concepts, and public workshop discussion.
Yes. So, yeah, and we'll be able to, be finished by 8:45. That's for sure, I think.
Great, and then we'll have items after you finish too.
Yes.
We have a few.
Yeah, that's right. So we'll try to go through this. So our.
10 after 8. 10 after 8.
10 after 8, okay.
And I'll do my best to keep an eye, but also listen to
Yeah,
you.
we've got, the PowerPoint's fairly short that we're going to go through. And I'm going to just go through, we'll start with the, status of work, where we are, the timeline, which is always important to us, and the next dates. And then Suzanne and I will go through the sort of zoning revisions, thoughts on that, because we've got some comments that Abby was, kind enough to send to us on the zoning. And then Jonathan, I hope is.
Yes, he's
He's
on.
He's on, Jonathan and Nick are on. And go through just a refresher on the design concepts, which Jonathan had presented those previously. But we've made a few minor, adjustments in response to, comments. And then key to leave enough time we'd like to discuss the public workshop with you. It won't take long, but we want to, because that's important, and how that's, Abby's already got, publicity out on it. And so how that would work is important. So that would be the final agenda item we have. And so we might want to go to the slides on this, if we're set. Yeah, and I think we can go to project timeline. And you've all got a hard copy of this timeline. So you go to the next, here it is.
Thank you.
So where we are in this, we've got, we're sort of at the final, effort to conclude before the summer, which is what we've all been, that's what the timeline's been and sort of the contract idea has been. So I think we're good because we've started to write now the introductory pieces, all the existing conditions, the market studies done. We're starting to put those together in report format so that, after the work, we don't want to write a report until after the workshop, but we're putting all the chapters, basic data, all of that we presented to you together so that after the workshop, we'll be able to produce a report on time for the next committee meeting. And then, and so I think that we would be able to remain on time. In other words, maybe I should just stand up there for a minute,
Go ahead.
I don't have a pointer. I forgot. Well, this pointer
Doesn't work.
Doesn't work. Yeah. So it's at any rate, we're aiming for the workshop May 15th. So we're here, end of April, and so we'll go over the workshop tonight, make any changes or adjustments, then we'll be ready for that workshop. But after the workshop, this meeting at the end of May is kind of important to us, to meet with you, to get any of your comments after the workshop, and we will hope to have for you a working draft to go over with you. And then based upon your comments at that meeting, we'll be able to do a revised draft, a whole draft, so that you see it. And what we're hoping is that in June, hopefully before school gets out, to have just maybe a presentation of what's in that draft, to the public. That's what's in our contract to do. I think we're on schedule. I think we've got a lot of work done. And so that's the overall schedule for things. And I think tonight at the end, we'll spend some time on a workshop itself. So that's the overall timeline. And I think any questions on the timeline?
No.
Yeah, okay. And then,
To set the date for the meeting in June for the final presentation?
thank you. We should do that. That's the one date we don't have down.
Should we do it on our
We-
regular committee meeting?
So that's the last.
Yeah, we thought
Wednesday.
about
The
that.
only issue is that would be potentially after school gets out. I don't know, it's up to
I
you
mean,
all.
we're okay on it if you wanted to stay on that, but your last, it would be a Wednesday night, the last Wednesday in June. And that would be June 25th. And we were wondering, we're okay on that, by the way, the 25th. We're okay staying on the schedule. I know Mark wanted always to stay on that last Wednesday of the month, but when does, I don't know when your school does.
June 11th.
June 11th? Wow.
So I don't think we need to
Okay.
make it super close to the last day of school. I think that was just the thought to make sure
Okay,
that we were
yeah.
all in town.
I mean, we're happy with the 25th. We were wondering about the 18th, something like that. I didn't know my school got out. That's early.
Not as many snow days this year.
Okay. There were no snow days.
Or I could be wrong.
Yeah. So, it's up to you when, but it would be good for us to work, get ourselves prepared. We work to a date. So I don't know if you want to get back to us through Abby, but right now, we're kind of okay on, any of those Wednesdays. We're not, I mean, by Wednesdays, I mean the 11th, the 18th, or the 25th. I mean, it doesn't have
Let's
to be.
aim for the 25th.
The 25th, okay,
Abby
yeah.
can further communicate.
Yeah. All
Does
right.
anything jump out to anyone initially about that not working? Okay, let's have you send an email. Perfect.
Yeah, and we would see that then as the, final meeting, presentation. And it's not to say, by the way, if something comes up at that meeting and you decide as a committee, hey, whoa, we need a revision, we need a couple of revisions, we'll of course make those revisions.
Great.
So that, we'll stay with it. But it's just to make sure that, if you hold a meeting in July or August, it's, I think, not problematic, but it's not, it's better to, I think, avoid the summer,
All right.
type of thing, so, okay. So we could go to the next slide then. And so this is not new because we did show it last time, but it's just to reinforce that what we've done now in the red is the proposed one zone, one Granby Center zone, which I think is what everyone had mentioned to us, and we really wanted to have that.
More or less.
More or less, yeah.
One center zone would
one-
incorporate center zone, center edge, and center commons.
Yes.
That would be one zone.
Yeah, one zone, so in red. And it's, so that's what we have done in terms of the proposed Granby Center zone. It was also a suggestion, I don't know what committee member made it, but that we include this area in it. Made sense to us. And we have included the town hall area in the Granby Center zone. So that's the map and then the next slide.
Before we move
Oh,
on
sorry.
from this one, does anyone want to make any comments about this proposed Granby Center zone, just as you see it on the map? I know, Eric, you had started to say something, so
Sure.
go ahead if you want to talk about
yeah.
your thoughts.
Nope.
We had a planning and zoning meeting last week, and Abby gave an update to the committee on the progress this committee is making. And a few of us that are here, had an opportunity to speak as well. Some of the feedback that we received from two members was that we didn't go far enough down Route 10 towards Simsbury with the new proposed center. So that was one.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
and,
that raises immediately.
I just don't have to respond. It's
Yeah,
just,
yeah.
that's the feedback.
Yeah, yeah.
That's very lopsided towards, it looks lopsided on the map, and it doesn't do enough to come down to put some additional properties down Route 10 and a better use. So that was the feedback there. There was some favorable feedback there was at least one iteration that had a suggested municipal parking lot on a piece of property that was very well received as well. So that was some feedback that was received from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Helpful.
Should we respond a little bit, Tim?
Sure, you're welcome. You're welcome to.
I really, it's the first one, first comment, not the parking lot. I think going down Route 10, 202, you're all in residential with the historic overlay district, and you're all set back. It's a tremendous, it's a beautiful setback, beautiful road the way it is. And we're saying, of course, we've said, and I've met, we've met, that was Mark's first request, meet with the historic district people. And I think that, we're in favor, you can tell how we wrote this, that we think that that area, that historic district ought to be able to improve properties and not let a property be, when they brought us around, I noticed one property was not maintained well. It was clear that to have the ability to have uses in the buildings that may not be limited to one person. And we found this in a lot of historic districts in Connecticut, that where you can allow you to preserve the structure. You want to preserve the structure, but you can allow different uses in the structure. So we've seen in some other historic districts that we've worked in, and we do a lot of reviews downstate in the coastal area, in places like Rowayton, where we've seen single-family homes, they've become 2 or 3 family homes in an historic district, but what they use is the historic controls in Rowayton, for instance, because we do their reviews. But they're a village. Rowayton itself, you never think of this, it's a village district. So basically, you have control over, the preservation of the building itself and the setting, but the use can vary. But I see that as more of a town-wide issue, quite frankly, or an historic district issue. It's not a Granby Center issue as much, but I would suggest that you not go down Route 10. At this point in the study, I think, I don't see, there are no commercial uses in Route 10. It's never been considered, I don't know, I may be wrong here. My impression was it has not been considered part of the center. And so
Well, it's the center edge. So there's
It-
two ways,
it
there's
is,
there's
yeah,
two, so
yeah.
you started to hit on
Yeah.
the solution,
Yeah.
which is providing for additional uses
yeah,
in if we made a decision not to expand the Granby Center, additional uses in the center edge that are not residential. There are 3 properties that are close to the center edge, center zone right now, the new center zone, that are in a terrible state of disrepair, not 1, 3.
Right,
So it's time to, I think, if expanding the red on the map may or may not be the right solution, certainly giving some thought to additional uses in the center edge would help.
yeah. It's just that, it's sort of for me, I'm being very honest reaction. It's mission creep. I don't think that going down Route 10 should be part of Granby Center. I think it's an issue with the historic district of being
We don't have
able.
we don't have a historic district.
Well, you have a SHPO designated district, so that makes it an historic district. And it can be, I'm not sure of the National Register status, but to get on the National Register, you got to go through a SHPO, which they did.
We can move. I think John has a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No,
Yeah.
it's,
That's important.
question, comment. So the question was there, absent the focus on places that perhaps have an appearance of being blight, is there a goal of, what's the goal of extending that zone down to 10? Or what was the stated or the idea?
To put those buildings that are underutilized to additional uses and preserve them.
Okay. With that,
Because they're on the way to not being preserved.
and I think
Yeah.
Is that, and again, this is a rhetorical question, is that better accomplished through a property maintenance code and a design criteria than it is extending the zone?
It's not. You need to be put to additional uses that are non-residential.
So what you're saying is by trying to expand the uses,
You'll preserve the property.
you have a better pair of dice to roll that will help
Yes.
preserve
Yes.
Yeah, they-
those structures in a historical
We
manner.
see it in use across Connecticut, neighboring towns.
Okay, so
But I was gonna say, that doesn't fix the person that doesn't want to change their use and their occupancy. Property maintenance code would.
And can they all be tools, just like the
Exactly. It's
demolition? Yeah,
bunch
because I
of
think
different tools in the
what I'm
toolbox.
hearing is that we're all pro-preservation.
Yes.
And that it's the how of it. If
right.
there is some interesting evidence about expanding uses and people interacting with that historical property and actually keeping it more alive and the integrity. So I think it's just, I think when we talk about the demolition delay ordinance, that's another tool, and we'll get to that. But really laying out, and if you guys could maybe work on this for next time, maybe bullet point lists of ways that we can really make sure those buildings are preserved. Because I think that could be confusing, extending it, the language may seem like, wait a minute, you're gonna put in a what there? But no, I think that it's really important to be clear that,
Yes.
in order to preserve.
That's right.
But I see it as a separate issue. I really do.
Okay.
I don't think expanding down is the right mechanism.
Okay.
I think the right mechanism, you have an actual SHPO designated historic district. It's mapped. In that district and those regulations for that district, that's where you can solve it. You can have the maintenance law, you can have demolition provision, and you can allow more uses that will preserve the building. And that's the way to do it, I think. That's the way we've seen other communities do it. I think to extend the Granby Center zone will create tremendous confusion by members of the public as to what you're doing. It's never been considered. I shouldn't say this. You know Granby. I don't, but all that I've read, that's not, for instance, in your POCD. You told us to, the goals were going to be on the basis of the POCD. We've actually written that section up on the POCD. And the POCD description, I have it with me, for Granby Center, never mentions an extension of Granby Center down Route 10. Never mentions that. That's never been an issue that I can see has been raised here before. I don't mean to be so blunt about it, but you can tell I think it's a mistake. So it's just my take on it. I think the better mechanism is to use the historic district and actually write in regulations for the historic district. Then you've covered all of the potential, problems with the district, but also opportunities with it. You can get in both the demolition delay, you can get in maintenance, and you can get in different uses. And I agree with, Eric, I agree with all of that. And when I met with those people, I said to them, look, you can't insist that a house that's too big for someone and they can't maintain, that's the only way to do it. You can, by allowing greater use of the building itself in return for preserving the building, you get, even some office use in it. In the building. But I think the way to do it, the mechanism, is the historic district itself. I just,
Can you put some writing
Oh, yeah.
together in a framework
Sure.
of the mechanisms that
Yeah.
you would do so
Yeah.
that we are all
yeah,
wanting to
I
preserve
do,
those
but in
properties?
thinking about it, I really want to emphasize, it's not in your POCD. We didn't have an initial workshop on any of this because we were directed by you all, I think accurately, well advised, to follow the POCD, which we've done. This is not in the POCD. And I think it's it's just me, but I wouldn't, I can write it up and try to answer the question. But Eric, I'm with you on what you want to do, though. I just think the mechanism of it is the historic district itself. Anyway, sorry. But can you use the second one, is the parking lot that you mentioned We know where that is.
The one on the corner.
But doesn't, it's the one in back,
I don't necessarily think it matters where it was, but
Okay.
the committee was very in favorable of municipal parking, so.
We have a couple.
we got a
options.
couple
Yeah.
options.
right.
We got
That's
two
right.
options in
That's
the
right.
presentation on that. Yeah, we agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Okay,
was the one on Bank Street.
That was the one that they
Yeah.
had seen in
Strip,
in a
not-
previous iteration, but I think the concept is to have some shareable parking and encourage the walking that you had
yeah,
talked
we've
about.
got, okay,
Isn't-
we're right on board with you.
There's in the new layout, there's a couple
Yeah,
other
I saw that.
potential options.
Yeah.
that-
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Let's keep going.
Okay, let's keep going,
And-
sorry.
No, that's, I think some.
Yeah, no, that's
Getting
good.
worked out.
Zoning is number two. so-
Number two, we hit it.
We're here, we've arrived.
Just one more point on the zoning. So if we're looking at the red area, and we want to possibly consider the expansion of that, or shall I call it the recognition of the expansion of that, we probably should be looking north versus south. North is a little bit more of a shoe-in, because some of the established uses are already what we're proposing.
Sure.
Or what is. So, I mean, Station 280
Yeah.
is kind of is a natural for it to fall into the new red center zone. That's why we mentioned at the last meeting, the town hall is a natural placement.
And even going further
This
down, there's
wall.
already other commercial uses on town.
Right, I mean, could we get up to the schools for, within the red center zone? Maybe, maybe not, but at least, because nothing else is really going to happen on Station 280's property.
Yeah,
Because
it's all
everything
built
else is
out.
in wetlands.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
nothing else is developable. So when you plop that in there, if you really want to get aggressive, it abuts Anderson Park. To the west side of 10 and 202, you have Meadowbrook, I always get
Yes.
that name, Meadowbrook Housing.
Sandbrook,
Sam-
sorry.
Sandbrook.
There's a daycare there, I think, right? There's a hairstylist places, so there's already commercial
Right, so,
uses.
so right across from Station 280, again, you have some natural multifamily, things that would almost fit within the new red center zone.
Yes.
Because they're already established.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think they do?
And
I don't mean
If you
to,
really want to push it, cemetery is a cemetery. If you want to round off a core center area where there is not much threat as to what could be developed or changed down the road, it's to the north.
Sure.
So,
Makes
just
sense.
food for thought on that.
yeah. But the core focus here was to get your center more prosperous, more mixed use, and this is what your POCD is saying. And I'm go back to that POCD because we haven't really looked at it now. And to me, the more you expand things just to include, the multifamily is already allowed in the zoning that you have. Obviously, you wouldn't have, section 280, you wouldn't have that multifamily if it weren't allowed. And so what do you gain by going north? I think you, in a certain way, we think you should have a concise center that's for a mixed use, particularly retail. I don't think you want to expand retail very much, to be honest with you. Our market studies indicating retail is a little bit weak because of the, buying online, shopping online. And the office market is there, but it's not strong. So that the answer in the center is mixed use, office, housing, and that can make for a better retail shopping environment. But the more you expand this zone with those types of, incentives for mixed use, the more you weaken the center, I think. I'm responding to our own market study, of course, but that's why I don't know what it gains you. But I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. I'm just saying, I go back to John's question. Why would you want to do that? Why do you want to do it?
Well,
Is it just to round it off, or?
Well, I
you know.
think what you need to look at is the real details of the new red center zone, say with
Right.
respect to the sharing of various assets or parking or incentives to do things. I think sometimes the more people you have in the pot, you're going to be able to gain a little more traction. So on the west side of 10 and 202, on some of these little pieces of properties before you get up to the Salmon Brook multifamily housing, and even after that a little bit, if you ever
Yeah.
got the combining of properties there, now you can begin to comprehensively, put something together that,
I'm not saying we
So-
can't look at it, but it is, again, not in your POCD. It's not there.
Well, we're
And
rereading,
you
the
should.
POCD is up for renew.
Right, well, that is maybe where you should do this, in the POCD, because if we adopt zoning, or if we have a plan out there, and one of the major things you said to us in the first meeting, you want to be consistent, don't bother reinventing the wheel. Our POCD has gone through all the public outreach, what is wanted. So we followed that, and if you make a change like that, I think you've got an argument that someone could make, a good attorney could make, that you're not being consistent with your POCD. And it's a thought, that's, and if your POCD is coming up, that may be the time to handle that. But, because this is, in a way, for us also, and I don't want to be here self-serving, but in a way, this is the 11th hour. We're raising changes in the map, which, we've been talking about for 5 months. And so I think there's got to be a real reason to change the map.
so refresh my memory on the POCD.
I got it here.
Does it call out where the center core zone cannot be touched or expanded? If that's the
doesn't-
case, we got to take the town hall out tonight.
No, it doesn't use those exact words, but I think I have the pen, I'm not sure I do. I think I have the,
It just speaks to Granby Center.
Yeah, it does,
I don't know
yeah.
that it distinguishes between
Zone.
the
Yeah.
center common, center edge, or commercial core, if you will, the COCE zone.
yeah,
I think when you read it, you can draw a parallel to what is the COCE by some of the language, but it does not specify exactly
yeah.
Right.
where.
It's a
And-
4 pages, and I just can't place my hand, we're looking for it now.
Right. And in stating some of this stuff
Yeah.
tonight, one might say, we're coming a little late to the game here in, proposing something like this. But you really don't know that you can do that until you go through this exercise.
Correct.
Because you begin to look at the limitations with what we're dealing with in the core. And, again, you don't know that until you start looking at things, getting people's feedback, talking to the stakeholders.
And we did
start
that.
looking at the uses and.
Yeah, so to that end, would this be an appropriate, I know you have the public workshop board drawn up, but would this be an appropriate exercise as part of that? This is the starting point or the initial draft of the center and see what folks think, because I think that was
We did
part of
that.
it
That's what I
initially,
was gonna
where
say.
is the
Yeah.
center,
And
right?
hopefully you guys are responding with this to
Yeah,
public.
let me read a little.
And I don't think I think it can be iterative. I like the idea
Yeah.
of going back and saying, look, if we use what you proposed we use and what the feedback came from, and then John on this survey, that was there as well, right? So we have, I think with the survey, maybe closer to 500? Yeah, so then bringing it back, because design should be iterative and saying to them, would this match
With
that?
this, match.
I like that, and I know it feels last minute, but I think
Yeah,
we
I
do
don't think
need
it
that
is, yeah.
feedback
Yeah. Do
from
you-
the public.
Can we print this out for the committee? Because we've got it, but for instance, the 4 goals, right away, and I know there's no map, but just listen to these. Continually develop and redevelop the center as a cohesive, dynamic, mixed-use area for the benefit of the residents and the business community. 2, improve pedestrian access throughout the center. They don't have a map of the center, but as you read on, it says things like, maintain the center green as the special focal point of the center. Increase the number and variety of businesses, particularly restaurants. And then it goes through special events in the center, and it always talks about the center. But the language is fairly clear that they were not suggesting expanding the center. So I would take a look at it, because our charge was to follow the POCD. And I actually think that expanding things either down Route 10 or up 202 is not consistent with this POCD. I mean, but I think we can print it out. I remember when Abby emphasized to us, I don't mean to, she's stepped out, but Abby emphasized to us, all that you do, and you guys mentioned this, all that you do should relate back to the POCD. So I kept saying that to all of our team. Let's relate back to the.
I mean, it is an anchoring document, but
It's an anchoring document. But it's living, and it
I'll make one other just final
Yeah.
observation. You're referring to the center as, and the POCD, the center is
Yeah.
3 zones. You're referring to only one of the zones. So that document
Yeah.
refers to all 3 of the center zones.
Well, read the document. I don't think it does.
Listen, I sat on a year
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah, I know.
On an
Yeah.
implementation plan committee. I know every word of that.
Yeah,
document,
okay, great,
thankfully.
because it doesn't read that way. There's 4 pages in the POCD devoted to the center, and the way it reads is that sort of heart of the red area between the green and, the shopping center.
I propose that.
But anyway,
Move
let's
forward
move
with
forward.
our agenda, and I
Yeah.
also would love to see something put together for
Yeah.
getting public input, because
We'll
we
get,
did and we
yeah, we can do that at the workshop.
Absolutely.
All right, good.
Because it's a unique question that you're
Yeah.
not gonna have in
Yeah,
a
not
lot of
gonna have,
places.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
All right.
All right, well, we can go on. We'll go to the second slide on zoning.
That's okay.
So go to the next slide, yeah. Yeah, but this is a good discussion.
You have
Yeah.
to wait 15.
It needs to happen.
I have to wait 15 now, okay. I'm gonna, this is uses and also what I call area and bulk scheduling. I'm gonna turn this to Suzanne.
Sure. So the biggest change since the previous meeting, which I think we can emphasize for the sake of time, we went over the permitted and special permit uses last time. In red are the uses that, from our feedback, we heard should no longer be permitted by right or special permit since the last meeting. Those include single-family uses. Those would just become prior non-conforming uses. Attached accessory apartments and detached accessory apartments, family childcare home or group childcare home. Those were all sort of accompany the single-family uses, and that's why they were included or added as permitted uses. And then lastly, we heard that fueling stations for motor vehicles should really not be allowed in the center. They're not what the center zoning is intended for, so we removed those as well. Are there any other comments or any?
Maybe just to clarify for anyone listening to that, if you have a house or a fueling station, it's good to stay there.
Yeah.
So-
Not new.
I mean, because the language sounds really harsh, like no more.
Yeah.
But I think that's just
Yeah.
important to clarify.
If you're like, a single-family house.
Yeah.
Which would be the real question, you would become a prior non-conforming use, so that you have the right to remain.
Yep.
In a certain way, the Citgo station will become and maybe one other station will become the only gas station.
Yeah,
A couple as far as the existing
Yeah.
non-conforming. The question becomes, if natural disaster, weather event, fire, something like that, burns flat, are they able to rebuild?
Yes.
Still be as
Yes.
existing non-conforming. All right, so they're there for life.
And same with single family home, right? They can resell it
Yeah.
as such. So
Yeah. They'll be
thank
controlled
you
by
for
your,
clarifying that.
existing code, yeah.
Okay, so on the area and bulk standards, the major changes, next slide, please. The major changes are really centering the Granby Center zones, some feedback we heard on the commercial center. So that means the lot size of 20,000 square feet is in line with the existing lot size, minimum lot area in the commercial center. The minimum front yard setback is the same as currently in the commercial center, but we added in one footnote here, and this is really for discussion with you all. we felt that creating, as we mentioned before, a minimum front yard setback on state roads of 35 feet could be useful in preserving the New England existing frontage, that the style of built environment that exists on those state roads now. In some of those areas, the setback is something more like 50 feet. And we wanted to give the option for people to preserve that building typology that is currently there. So that's a decision for you all, is that the minimum front yard setback on state roads could be 35 feet to provide for a larger New England typical front yard setback in those areas.
I mean, you have that, actually, you have more than that. I think when you just walk down or drive down 10202, those setbacks are significant. And we just felt on a state road, the setback, currently, as you can see, the minimum front yard in the center common zone currently is 50 feet. So we thought, and it's the commercial center, the COCE, that, has the 25 feet. So we felt on a state road, I mean, we're talking 20, Route 10, 202, so Hartford Avenue, and they ought to set back a little bit more. The reason we chose 35 is you can't easily, the 35 feet gives you a landscape buffer with a more heavily traveled road without you can't easily put, I shouldn't speak for P&Z, but I doubt you would approve any. I mean, you don't want parking in the front yard.
Try not to.
You don't want, and 35 feet is not quite enough. You need 40 feet to get even single loaded parking. And so the 35 feet gives you a nice green buffer. And in fact, we could even write in here, it's already in your code in other sections, that there's no parking in a front yard. We don't want to encourage that. So the 35 feet, we didn't want to go 50 because then, somebody could try to do parking and try to do that. And so the 35 we felt works, and we tend to preserve the green area on both sides of the state road just a little bit better. 25 feet is not much.
Does anyone want to share their opinion on that?
Yeah,
I think it's fine.
Yeah. I think your logic seems
yeah.
good.
Okay, all right.
The other change that I wanted to note, Frank will discuss about the height. That hasn't changed since in the following slides. I'll let him do that. But the one other point that I wanted to make is, you can see footnotes 4 and 5 here. We suggest keeping the maximum density, the dwelling units per acre, the same. What's currently there, the 15 units per acre. But to address some of those concerns with the really large scale developments, we suggested decreasing the permitted density to 12 units per acre on those lots that are greater than 1.5 acres. So that will restrict the total number of units that would be able to be built on those larger acre lots, or ones that are maybe combined in the future. So we'll touch on that a little bit that was incorporated into the potential build-out analysis, but. And then the residential buffer area stays the same, of the 25-foot landscaping buffer abutting a single-family home use. Great.
Okay.
So the next slide, Frank will talk a little bit
Yeah.
about some of our drawings related to height.
Yeah, Abby indicated to us that there had been a comment that there was a concern over height. And the current height in the, in the zoning the current is 45 feet. So we've been working with that. But what we tried to suggest is that where you had a mixed-use building, so currently allowed is on the left here, and we drew that out. And then proposed is on the right, where if it were two things, if it were a mixed-use building, so you had retail, say, on the ground floor, and then you could have office, or you could have services on the ground floor, but retail normally has, as opposed to just a residential building, retail normally has that 15 feet. It could be 12 to 15 feet on the ground floor, and that pushes things up just a little bit. So it can still work at 45 feet, but if we gave a bonus of 3 feet we could cover that, rather than having a ground floor at 11 feet, you have, a ground floor at 15. We wanted to give a little bit of a chance to do a good pitched roof that's not too flat. So we were suggesting that for a case where it's a mixed-use building, retail on the ground floor, and they are offering to P and Z, I presume, in site plan, some public benefits such as, and you'll see later, and you already know this, an easement for the sidewalks you want to get in here, or open space, that they could go to 48 feet. So we drew the difference here to scale. So you can see the proposed extra 3 feet. I think you can visually kind of see that, but it is fairly, I mean, the drawing should say this, but I think to the normal eye, I think most people would say that's not a major change, but I wanted to
I
just
like
draw
the
it out.
following slides too.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
wanna rush you into them, but because they show adjacency.
Yes.
This, it does look negligible, but
Yeah.
I think the discussion may come more
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Perhaps,
to look, because it's to scale and adjacent to what's there. So if you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Moving the slide
I'd
forward.
like to ask a quick
Yes.
question, might be
Yeah.
for Abby or for Eric. Is the definition for height in planning and zoning a normally used consistent definition? Because it's not artfully crafted with that or in the middle. Because it creates confusion, because I would say the normal average human being, when you say it has 45-foot overall height, would think it means 45 overall height, but it's not.
No, when site plans come in, we use the definition that's in the zoning regulations.
But is that
For
like
him,
consistent
yeah.
across like a whole bunch of other places, or is that a magic Granby thing?
No, other towns, it's similar.
Yeah, if you do a pitched roof,
Yeah.
almost all the
That's all I
codes
wanted
were,
to know.
yeah, almost all the codes we're used to. It's the midpoint
Yeah.
between the eaves and, yeah, I know. Yeah.
Terrible.
But I didn't want to change it.
No, I don't want to change it, like, if that's the way it is across the universe, but it's a
Yeah.
horrible,
bigger issue.
it is a horrible definition.
So this first slide here, by the way, this is just no one's proposing this building, as you know, but it's the corner of, Main Street and Route 20 as it comes in. So you see the post office labeled and then the CVS. Now, Jonathan drew out, what could maybe be done there, and this is sort of showing an existing condition. And then I think the next slide shows the proposed change that sorry, maybe it did. Okay.
Oh,
It
so there should be
should.
one
There should be
one
one.
slide after that?
Yeah.
There it is, in the pack.
Yep, like somebody inflated the building by extra 3 feet.
I
Yeah,
don't know why it's not showing up there, but you have it in your packets here. You can see side by
Yeah.
side if you put them like this.
yeah, it's in your packet. Sorry, I thought that was.
Not there.
Yeah.
It's not in your slide deck,
It's,
if that's what they're working on.
Oh, it looks like this
hold on.
insert is wrong. That's the same one. Is it gonna be the same thing on the, or no? Oh, no, it's slightly higher. Sorry, it's just so slightly.
By the way, it's hard to tell, you're right.
Yeah.
It is very hard to tell between what's existing and
Right.
what's proposed.
It's there, I can see
Yeah,
it.
'cause if you see the.
It is
on the-
absolutely noticeable if you flip between them.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
building behind it is where you can see, if you measure on your eye, the building behind it, you can see the difference in height.
Yeah,
That's why it's not showing up there, but you have it in your pocket here.
yeah.
Flip back, if you go back one slide, is it the one that says currently allowed?
Oh, I must,
I'm sorry,
Yes.
can,
The slide before is currently
Can you
allowed.
back up one slide?
oh, there,
There it
okay,
is.
yeah,
There
that's
it
a
is.
pretty
Yeah,
close
there
attention,
you
but
go.
those,
sorry.
Flip between the two of those, it
Yeah.
becomes evident what the change is.
So there you go.
It is
From
noticeable.
an
Yeah.
from an architectural standpoint, the higher the roof line, it's better. Let's not run that.
Yeah. So that is,
From a mass perspective, it's.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's, we wanted to, you had asked about height, and that's, now, if that's becomes a large issue, the height, what we thought about is you could also, I'm not necessarily suggesting this, but the other thing we did in the office is, well, we could reduce the existing height allowable. No one suggested this, to 42 feet, and then bonusable another 3 feet. The reason we started with 45 is that's what you have.
Yes.
And I want to make sure that that pitched roof is not flattened too much.
And
so that-
Jonathan should be able to talk now. He's,
Oh,
I think he's
good.
unmuted, Jonathan, if you want to share
Okay,
anything.
Good.
Thank you, yeah. Jump in, Jonathan. I forgot.
Hey, I've been talking for a half hour.
I'm so sorry, I didn't see your message.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. I was just going to offer, if you want, Frank, I could share my screen and show that missing slide.
No, we found
Oh,
it.
we found it, Jonathan.
Oh, you found it?
Yeah,
Okay. Very
yeah,
good.
yep. So we've got it. Yep. So that's, I think the advantage of getting a bonus and giving P and Z some discretion is to get some public benefit out of that 3 extra feet. And that was, you have to be able to get easements for the sidewalks. And, we get into design, as you know, those sidewalks are interconnecting everything. You've got to get grant money, or you've got to get the ability from those property owners, because it's all private, or most of the site, is privately owned. So we thought that gives P and Z some extra ability to ask for public benefits for that 3 feet of height. So that's where. All right, well, we could
Is that
go.
something we can put in the public input workshop as well?
Yes, oh, yeah, we plan,
And
have-
especially with the visual communication.
oh, yeah, the visual will have these
Yeah,
for
that
the
would be
public
great.
presentation. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep, yeah. So then the next slide will give you, and what we were also told was there was concern over the parking ratios. Were they high enough to ensure that there's adequate parking? We went over it again. We used, both in residential and in commercial, we used what's called ITE out of Washington. They do these studies nationwide. You've already made a decision on residential to stay with residential, and those residential parking requirements you have. A 1-bedroom at 1.5, 2-bedroom at 2 spaces per unit. All of the studies that we've seen show that is more than enough parking. That will give you more than adequate parking for residential, and elderly at 1 per unit. That will, give you plenty. Actually, the ITE numbers, just so you know, are a little bit, the ITE number for a 1-bedroom is more like 1.25, and, for a 2-bedroom, it's 1.75, just so you know. So you've got a cushion built in there, and I think you're pretty content that you'll have more than enough. I went over this with George on the commercial, and he said, look, if you want to be safe, he said ITE uses a range for commercial offices, and that range settles at about 3.3 spaces. I hate to be so, I exact on it. So he said, listen, if there is a concern about it, use 3.5. And he said, you will definitely have enough parking. He said the same for medical offices. He said ITE is around 4.6 to 4.7. He said, round up, and you've got 5 spaces. And he said the same for retail. The real retail, he says about 3.3 spaces. So he said, if you want to go to 4, go to 4. I mean, he's very confident that it's a modest change, but it is more restrictive, and it's closer to what you have now. So that would be a way to respond. I said, because Abby said to us there was someone concerned with this. And
Do you want to speak to
Just
that?
a couple questions. Does that standard calculation contemplate mass transit use? Does it contemplate
No, it doesn't.
walkability, or is it
Yeah, it doesn't
assume all vehicle?
It's all vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, it assumes, like, I can't be 100% positive, but this is a suburban standard, non-TOD, non-transit oriented
Transit-oriented,
development,
okay.
non-transit.
So the reason I raised it as an issue, and I am completely, as I said, I am completely not for the paving of America. I mean, green space is wonderful. But what I have noticed
on various days, various times of day, I will make the assumption that the parking that we have currently in the center of town was created at a minimum and has not changed for a very long period of time. And it is full at various times. So I worry if something that we have has been created with the existing standard is now, with some retail and office space vacancies, barely adequate, that whether we are creating a challenge by reducing that in some cases significantly.
Well, that's why we've gone up a little bit. We heard that comment. I didn't know that you had made it, but if this is ultimately your call, all I can say is that we went over this. This is what the ITE standard is. However, the ITE standard today on your multifamily residential is a little bit lower, and you decided to keep it. You'll have, I think with some certainty can say you will in each of the developments have adequate parking, because ITE says, I know it's hard to explain to people, people will say, oh, one bedroom, how can you have how can it be one and a half or something, or 1 1/4? But you add up, as you know, P and Z knows, you add up all the units, and that's how you get to a total number. So I think that's going to more than work. But I think on the commercial, if we up it to these, you should be safe with today's standards.
The solution, whether it's the recommended or what we have now, whatever, is the municipal park.
Don't disagree, but what I find interesting too is, and with some of the circulation changes, even with adding parking, you're at a net sum zero. You're not adding any because you're taking away. So I'm not sure it's a plus.
When we get to that, we think that we're going to have a plus, we think, with this plan. Well, let me get to it. Have a little bit of a plus. It's minor, you're right, but it does come out to a plus 15. But I'm going to, Nick's on the line, so I'm going to make sure that he's got all the numbers for you. So we should go
Next slide.
next slide.
Okay, great. So we conducted a potential build-out analysis using a methodology that we typically use. It's obviously impossible to predict what people will do with their private property, but the typical way to do it is to identify what the most likely to develop sites are. Those include things like sites that are underutilized or vacant, or could be merged potentially. So we created a soft site analysis, and you can see in yellow, those are the sites that we viewed as most likely to be developed in the coming years. And using this estimate, we then took the lot sizes. We assumed a combination, just for this exercise, of the properties on, I think, Morgan and on 202, because those are under common ownership. So that was one assumption that we made. But using those what we like to call soft sites, we then took the total lot area and figured out how much lot coverage would be allowed, the allowable lot coverage, the gross floor area, the ground floor area, and then the residential area potentially above, which would be a maximum of 2 stories. We calculated then the allowable units, and that would either be 12 or 15 units per acre, 15 units per acre on lots less than 1.5 acres in size, and 12 lots per acre on lots greater than 1.5 acres. And we calculated the allowable units if someone were to not have a density bonus, and the allowable units if someone were to have the density bonus. So the total number of potential residential units on those soft sites, if they were to absolutely max out the density, is 140 units. The total number of potential residential units with 20% density bonus would be 169 units. But that's important to note that in our experience, there's really an absorption rate of 15 to 25% on the highest end. Yeah. And that would see about 25 to 42 units in the next 10 years is our estimate. And that would also be assuming that in that case, it would be purely residential on the upper floors. So that's sort of assuming the maximum build out of mixed use. If we were then to look at, just for this exercise, if, let's say, 2/3 of the ground floor is used for commercial, that would give us, if we were to say 3,500 square feet per unit would be.
For commercial.
Yeah, for commercial, and then 5,000 would be for restaurants. It would be somewhere between 26 and 38 retail units, assuming that 2/3 of the ground floor is commercial. And that on the lower range would be if it's restaurants, because those areas, units tend to be bigger. On the higher end of the 38 retail units would be things like service uses, because those tend to be a little bit smaller. So any questions on that exercise?
By the way,
Yes.
I'll add that, just so you know, this is partly, based on experience, but it's partly science, but it's also partly a real estimate. And we kind of used a higher absorption rate over the next 10 years of the 15 to 25%. We've seen in other communities, in fact, that one I was kind of embarrassed, it didn't even reach 10%. And the reason is, now we have assumed, for instance, a gentleman who, when we talked to him, said he had no plans at all for his property. And we've included his property because we think and that's, at the main intersection there and all that yellow. So we've included it. He may or may not develop it. It just fit our criteria for a soft site. So that may not happen. I don't know. He's got other interests, other properties. So we've made an estimate here. But actually, using this, I thought it was reasonably modest, not a huge change.
Marty, did
Okay,
you want?
so Suzanne, I agree. I mean, 140 units overall for the center core, I mean, it's not huge, but, so you obviously, you did every soft point, every yellow point, you figured out how many were on. Okay, so the one that's in the historic overlay, the southernmost one.
Yes.
Okay. So you calculated out as if that was part of the red center.
Which is in the proposed, it is proposed to be part of the Granby Center Zone.
That's right.
That
Okay.
little one.
Yeah, so that's 254,
Last one.
254 Salmon Hook Street, right?
It's the last property.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so now I get it. All right, so so you're looking at that as if that, the existing structure is not there anymore. That's totally redeveloped.
Or it could be preserved and there could be.
It could be
Or
preserved.
wraparound.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
a rehabilitation or there's
What we're
other
s-
options, yeah.
Yeah, what we're seeing in
Okay.
these village districts, we
Sorry,
work
forgot.
in Connecticut recently. I got one before me in Norwalk where we're dealing with they're side by side. There are two historic buildings. And what the guy has done, it's fairly clever. He's throwing in, entirely sprinkled, he's putting money into preserving the building. And then adding on, it's not a lot, he's adding on 6 units in the back. And what we're reviewing, because it's a village district, we're reviewing the design and architecture, that it's appropriate. So we think something could happen like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But the price in Norwalk anyway, in the village district, of doing that type of thing is you must preserve the structure. So, not a choice. If you want it, the extra units, you got to preserve the structure.
Yeah. And you can put that in the framework too.
Yeah, I
Yes,
put that
well,
in the framework,
that would
which
be-
is why I think
Not to
that,
jump back, but
Yeah.
you can kind of take note of that.
Yeah, right,
That would be
right.
another tool.
we've got
I think the next slide, I don't know if Nick Sedera on our call is unmuted, but he might want to add something about the parking units. I think we'll turn it over to Nick and Jonathan now to talk about some of the revised design concepts.
So Jonathan, you're on.
Okay, hi, everybody. Yeah, so what we have here is a little bit more developed version of what we showed last time, which was really thinking about the details of how to knit in a pedestrian circulation network, as well as expand some opportunities for parking, which we'll talk about in a slide in a minute or two. But this layers in quite a bit of new sidewalk. We've calculated it out at about 5,000 linear feet of new sidewalk, kind of stitching together the existing network, so incorporating that. And overall, looking to expand opportunities for parking. We lose some somewhere to get in some of the sidewalk, and we add them in other places. So, for example, in this instance, we lose a couple of spaces towards the rear of the Citgo gas station. The Merchant Way extension, we do lose about 14 spaces. And then the Village Green in front of Grassroots, that's sort of reconfigured. And you lose a few parking spaces there. I'm seeing here about 7 spaces. And those that are lost are not obviously on Grassroots property, but those are on the public property that are part of the reconfigured green, which in turn adds a total area of about 12,000 square feet additional new green space. I know there's been also discussion of 26 Hartford Avenue and various options there, but if that was to convert to, say, a municipal parking lot, there would be an additional 58 parking spaces if that was converted. So all in all, this graphic really shows, the stitching together of what we think is a functional and will be a pleasurable sort of walking experience on a pedestrian network, and balances, the availability of parking. At the end of the day, you end up with more, and you end up with even more if you consider Hartford Avenue, 26 Hartford Avenue as an opportunity site. We can go to the next slide, or we can take some discussion questions here if you'd like.
Okay, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, that's right. Jonathan, we have, I'm told, about 10 minutes. So we need to get through these.
Okay. These are zoom-ins of the previous graphic, but they have been redrawn with a little bit more care and actually scaled out to make sure things will fit. And this shows a new concept for the expanded town green, reconfiguring access for the vehicles that do need to get into the Frontier building from the rear instead of across the town green. And then shows the reconfiguration of the parking and circulation in front of Grassroots. So maintaining that sort of little island that you can see, reconfiguring the parking spaces, restriping, and pulling back, what used to be the road that went almost and connected right down through the Salmon Brook and Hartford Avenue, but pulling that back and converting that to green. You'll see also in this a little bit more detail of, the way the pedestrian network actually works. So it would lead you down Merchant's Way and right up alongside past Grassroots, existing sort of outdoor space in the back, and bring you up right almost to the front door of Grassroots and then connect you over onto the green. And one of the things that we've also added in here is a pedestrian walkway from East Granby Road south through that parking area so you can access into the town green that way. Maybe the next slide.
While you're discussing all this, it might be a good idea in the public workshop to have an opportunity for people to have Post-its and put comments, like if you're going to bring. And I know
yes.
we're getting to that, but
Yeah, we're gonna-
it might be a good idea to make sure there's a way to comment for people.
Yeah, I think, Frank and Susanna, Nick and I all talked a lot about that public workshop, and we expect it to be very interactive and lots of opportunity for people to comment and draw and add sticky notes, and that's really the purpose of sharing this with the public. So this next slide shows a concept of an idea of extending a little bit of parking behind the Bear's Den. This came up through some conversations. And there already is some parking back there, and then it ends up turning into.
Can you go back?
Space.
Oh, can you go back one?
Yeah,
You got it, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, this is-
So that extends back. So what we've done here is added in some additional parking spaces, kept a sizable amount of green, and managed to layer in some connections between parking lots, which is something that came up at one of our previous meetings, rather than just sort of isolated parking areas, like this new parking connection between CVS and the post office. And then if this new parking area, this expansion behind, to the north of the Bears Den was to be realized, then we could add in a connection there as well. And again, this idea of allowing pedestrians to circulate through here, but also ease the traffic flow and allow people to go from one parking area to another. This, both of those encourage sort of this park once idea. And we can go to the next slide. Please, thank you. So here are the three options, and we presented these at the previous meeting, but really it's sort of boiled down to these three ideas I think had the most interest. So one would be a mixed use program on 26 Hartford Avenue. So this would be the type of duplex units with the parking towards the front and towards Bank Street rather than to the rear, because we know we have residents behind that. We could build in a buffer there, and then a small commercial use on the southern end of the site. We could also filter in some green space, hold that building back so it matches its neighbor, and again, knit in this new sidewalk and pedestrian network. Option two is what we were talking about earlier, is to think about this site as a potential opportunity for additional parking in Granby Center. And then option three was, this open space or actually turned over to sort of passive or even a little bit of active recreation at this site. And so I think with that, I'm going to go to the next slide and turn it back to Frank.
Thanks, Jonathan. And we can fit, we only got 3 slides here, so.
Okay, go ahead,
I
yeah.
can get this done on
Great.
on time. Yeah. But we wanted to cover the impacts of development because at the last meeting, someone questioned using the Rutgers numbers for public school children. And so what we've sent to Abby, and we've got copies that we handed out to you all, and that is, there are other Connecticut agencies that are using not only Rutgers, but they've come up with numbers. This is South Central COG in Connecticut, where we got their numbers. They're slightly less than the Rutgers numbers. And I think that it is hard to explain sometimes to people, but even if you look at the new data from the census, and it was just published in both the New York Times and particularly the Wall Street Journal had a whole article on this. And the writing now is I think that our estimate here, we really stand behind. There is no data that shows that public school children per unit on multifamily are increasing at all, or even on single family. You've got and I went over this before, but the fertility rate in the United States is you need 2.1 children per woman of childbearing age for the replacement rate of the population. So bar you didn't have any immigration in the United States, the current fertility rate in the United States, the Wall Street Journal just published this again, it's remained the same for 2 years now, is 1.6. That is phenomenally low.
If you didn't
So-
see it, there was a 60-minute special this past weekend on fertility rate.
Oh, I
declining-
missed that.
Declining across
Oh,
the world.
thanks, Eric.
Including the U.S.
By the way, in Europe, it's a crisis.
That's
All
right.
right, and in the one that is unbelievable, I just happen to be a little familiar with Korea for other reasons, but South Korea is the lowest birth rate, I think, of the developed
It was
world.
mentioned in the special, so.
Was it?
Check it out.
Okay, I will. But in other words, we stand solidly behind this. All the data we have shows that, and all of the regional people that are doing this in Connecticut. So the additional thing is, even if we are off by a little, your school district, Abby sent us your school enrollment numbers. I want to see what they were. And in 2017 to 2018, you had 1,862, according to the data. And in 2025, it's 1,680. So it's a drop of about 180 or so students in 7 years. And that's not unusual. We're running into this. There are some exceptions. But from what I can tell from the data, you are not an exception. Your school district has a declining enrollment, slightly declining enrollment. So even if these numbers were not exact, there's not an issue for your school district. But the main thing that people don't understand is multifamily housing is a net taxpayer. In other words, there's so few public school children, 1 per 10 units or 1 per 15 units. Those 15 units are all paying taxes to the school district for 1 public school child. So that's a net taxpayer. And people don't readily understand that because that has changed over the years. And also what's changed over the years is single-family homes. People say, well, people move out of the single-family home and younger families will move in. True, but the people moving out used to have, this is data from, 30, 40 years ago, used to have 3 or 4 children. People moving in have 1 or 2. That's the difference. It is a tremendous cultural change, not just in America, but it's already way in advance in Europe to the extent that these countries like Italy are really worried about, what their future is. So we're pretty convinced of this data that multifamily housing, which people don't get, is a net taxpayer to the school district. So it's most school districts now, and speaking with some, I just saw my brother last week, he's superintendent of schools out in Barkhamsted. He knows this stuff, and he said that they're all facing, not all, most of the school districts in Connecticut are facing a declining enrollment. So I don't want to belabor that, but we've got now more data than just Rutgers.
And we did ask you to bring the line of the multifamily.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So there you go. And then the last one is just the last slide. So you go one more slide. I did want to emphasize something, though, with what Jonathan said, and that is that the implementation of this is going to be critical because we've now developed a plan for nearly, it's 5,000 linear feet of sidewalk. So we do need to get grants in the capital budget, and we do need to get some incentives for P&Z to get easements and get people's permission, to use their property for these sidewalks. And then there's next steps in terms of, site plan approval, and then whether you want to do a village district, and this is a future decision by probably the selectmen, if you want to do a village district or design guidelines that, follow the guidelines developed here. So, by the way, there is one final page, right?
Yes, the one last slide will lead us into the
Yeah.
discussion of the public workshop.
Before we go to the public workshop, can I
Yeah,
just,
go ahead.
so, listen, looking at the layout, listening to what Jonathan said, I would offer 2 comments relative to parking. A, the on-street parking in front of Grassroots, I think, is overly optimistic for, maybe the math says it works, but it's the lineup of 5 or 6 vehicles on the street from there to Route 20 is overly optimistic. If you look at this, almost the same amount of space is taken by
vertical parking in front of the building, so that the math doesn't work. I would also offer that, you said that adding that parking will add some spaces, and it's still a net sum zero, because in order to do the circulation behind the building at 10 Hartford Ave, which makes a lot of sense, that sacrifices 18 parking spaces to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So you're going to take away 18, but you're only at 14, so we're barely at a net zero. So I just, things to think about when we, like, I think
Yeah.
from a circulation perspective and sidewalk, all of that makes sense, but we're not gaining anything.
Yeah, we tried hard to get some gain.
Yeah.
It's why we wanted to do that, and we talked to the owner of that, property. So, but again, it raises, that last slide is important, John, because you got to pay for it. Somebody's got to pay for that.
Yeah.
So you got to.
Ain't growing on trees.
Yeah, you need, right, you need grants. Grants have been traditionally available for sidewalks, have been. They've been less available for parking. And so, it falls to, it's going to fall to the capital budget to some extent, too. And
Yeah.
that's going to be probably an issue. I'd rather go the way of grants.
Yeah, and I'll be curious too what the feedback is from the public.
Yes,
I mean,
that's right.
personally, when I look at these plans, I see a lot of pavement. So it might be a little contrary to
Yeah.
necessarily
you.
need for that much
Yeah.
parking.
Said I don't.
So just curious, what
Yeah.
it comes back.
And also, we are in the process of adding the parking between Grassroots and the barn as well.
Yes.
And just, yes, it would be nice to integrate more sort of pocket parks and greenery around, but we'll see what the public says too.
Yeah, no, we'll see what they say, yeah. We've tried to get a slight surplus, or, John, as you've counted it up to be a net, no decrease in parking anyway. And anybody who new comes in will have to meet the parking requirements. But should we go, I'm
Just
sorry, let's
one
discuss,
other quick
yeah,
comment,
yeah.
I'll be real
discuss.
fast. On Suzanne, on the build-out analysis.
Yes.
Obviously, certain criteria was picked for, or how did these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties get on the list of a potential build-out analysis? And as we were going through the next couple of slides, showing the center in more detail, I kind of had a little bit of an aha moment where the criteria, or some of these, I like to put myself in the shoes of the owner of some of these properties, where if some of them may want to entertain multifamily, that could come into this build-out analysis. So in other words, like this larger one to the west of, how did that, because it's a larger piece, it's 3 acres or whatever, you put that in the build-out analysis because you could get some density there.
Yeah.
But there's also potentially some other little ones that are in the center here that are underutilized, or that are in a state that soon coming down the road, something either has to be done with them. Either they have to be renovated, or it's a start over. So while this adds 140 units, there could be some other little pockets where some owners may want to, instead of considering a parking avenue, they may want to look at putting in maybe some X number of units for multifamily.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I know,
Could we add
We
those
could,
in?
yeah, what we could do is, we could take a number of them, go look at them, and then say, we just took some small units, gathered them together,
right.
took what could reasonably be done, and then applied the same standards, and it'll get you a few more units.
Yeah, the reason for those smaller units being included, or the smaller lots being included, was for common ownership, if they were to merge to one larger lot. So I think that's why we figured that the smaller lots might be a little bit less feasible than the ability to merge one, but we can definitely add some more in.
Yeah, we can
The
do
smaller
that.
lots are tough, because the numbers don't make sense.
Exactly, yeah.
The numbers are very difficult, but
Yeah.
it's still, it's a potential option. But anyway,
We can have two options.
someone may consider it. Okay.
So the last,
The last
Yeah.
slide here, we wanted to spend a moment on, we thought the presentation, and by the way, we brought
yes, I
for
just
you.
handed it out.
You just handed it out, thank you. So we thought we wouldn't go through the whole presentation in a slide, because you've just been, what you would see is largely a repeat
Yes.
of all that you've seen, but in greater detail, for the presentation. But you've got the whole thing, and we can spend time on it if you want. We could go through it page by page.
That's okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. But the idea is we would make a presentation first, and then the public would see this presentation, which will probably take a half an hour anyway,
Hoping for less.
and hoping for less. All right.
That's what we were told, yeah.
We were told to be the less. Fine, we can be less. 20 minutes? 15 or 20 minutes?
Like 1 minute per slide, maybe?
I
That's
do
fine.
think some of it
That's
is
fine.
going to require some explanation
Yeah.
though, for folks
That's-
to
Yeah, to
But
understand.
then if you're going to break out, there can be,
Oh, yeah, and breaking out, by the way, and that's the key. So we can make the presentation a little bit shorter.
I
Alright.
think it's an hour and a half total booked, 7 to 8:30.
7 to 8:30.
7, 8:30.
and it sounds like it's not, like our previous one was an open house, so there was, people could come in and out, but this one has a start time where you want to be there for the lecture.
Yeah,
And the
I
activity.
think that if we start at 7, and let's say we were 20 minutes, so I always leave 5 minutes maybe, or 10. It might not start exactly at 7. So say it was 7:05, we were 20 minutes, we would finish at, say, 7:25, but in round numbers, yeah, maybe 7:30, if that was, but you think that's too much, John?
That's even a lot of
You're cutting
time.
yourself short. I
Yeah.
think.
So we were thinking about 45 minutes for the roundtable discussions and 15 minutes for
Right.
an opportunity for people to visit other tables. Do you
Yeah.
feel that that is reasonable?
By the way, we've done a lot of these. We find 45 minutes is a good amount of time.
It's okay if it goes past, I think.
But what it would be is
People are
7 to
engaged in
7:30
working,
for the presentation.
but the presentation probably should
45
have a consistent one.
Yeah, 45 minutes. So let me go through it.
Less worried about the 45 minutes than I am the subsequent 15. Is that enough?
Okay, from 8:30 to,
As
say,
people-
quarter to 9.
As people want to look at what other people did, I mean, the
Yeah.
people that did that work had the courtesy of 45 minutes to do that and come to
Right.
whatever that is, and then to go, well, you got 15 minutes to figure out what they just spent 45 minutes doing.
Yeah. What'll happen, what we've seen happen, and Jonathan, please chime in, you've done a lot of these, is that some people, once they're finished with their table, and, you know, it's 8:30, they're going to leave. Other people want to do just what you said, John, so they're going to go to other tables, see what the results were. They are going to know, because we will say, we're going to tabulate all those results, so they're going to be able to see them. So the idea was they could spend time. Are we being thrown out, though?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yes.
just quietly saying. If people want to linger,
If they,
It's okay.
in other words,
Yeah.
at
And
that
they will
point,
linger.
it's up to them. If they want to linger at their table, they
They'll
could, they
linger.
could leave, or they can go to other tables to see, to see. I find they are going to, some of them are going to do that, and it could last till 9 o'clock.
So when it comes to the roundtable, can you talk through, like, so each table will have
Yeah,
a
yep,
poster? Will there be like questions to prompt folks, or is it just kind of?
yeah.
Facilitated discussion.
Yes, oh, by the way, what we're hoping is that, you know, there'll be Jonathan, Suzanne, myself, we'll be at one of these tables, and we hope that you, each one of you could spread out and sit at a table, so that you also, because you know this is, you know this really well, and so if you could also sit at a table and act as almost a moderator, just to get discussion going. And the idea is that everyone at the table will have one of these. Every table will have one of these big drawings. So this gives you the, you know, the basic center area. And then to go through what's, you know, what's proposed here. And they will have the benefit of the presentation, so they'll know what's being proposed. And then to put, you know, red dots, things they don't like, green dots, things they really support, and then stickies for comments that they want to make on this, and they can do this. And we need to, by the way, this is the senior center, right? So we need to set up We need to get all tables set up ahead of time so
They
that,
recommend you do, and you might want to do this ahead of time. What I did is you draw a little floor plan of where you want everything and get it to them before. And then they
Yeah, I
have
can
it set
work
up
with
for
you
you.
on that.
yeah,
We'll touch base
okay,
afterwards, but-
yeah.
But that way you can just, it's set up when you walk
Yeah,
in.
yeah, and when we walk in, it's set up, that'd be ideal. And so that, Jonathan, do you want to add?
No, Frank, I think you did a great job of explaining it. I really see, the table exercise is not just like, okay, sit down, everybody, put on the dots and so forth. There's going to be a lot of discussion. We can have some trace paper there to draw out some alternative ideas and listen to people's input on various aspects of what's being proposed. And there could even be, new ideas that we haven't put up at this point. And it's all of those things that will sort of go through that. But I do agree with a couple things here that's been mentioned. One, I think we should try and be as short as possible on our presentation and get to talking to people. And secondly, I think, that 45 minutes, 50 minutes, Frank's absolutely right. After that, it starts to sort of peter out a little bit at these types of exercises. And leaving enough time for people to visit around and maybe ask questions at the end makes sense.
Yeah, I think the 45, we were just, by the way, we just had about 100 people in Brookfield at a workshop. And it was a little different than this, but they were roundtable discussions. And we find 45 minutes, half hour is a little too short, an hour is a little too long. That 45 minutes is about right. And where I could tell it in Brookfield is I was going around to the tables, what I call a 10-minute warning. And one table said to me, 5 minutes is fine. So you get a sense of when people, and we find that 45 minutes is a good.
Do we want to give any quick feedback on the public workshop before moving on with our agenda? And can I open it up to emailing Abby as well? If you leave here tonight and you're like, oh, I wish I had said this, so that she can then communicate with you guys. Does that feel okay with you? Is everyone okay moving on? All right. Are you guys finished with your
Done.
presentation? Thank you. You did a good job with time too. Up next is demolition delay ordinance. And Abby, did you have a way you wanted to do this in terms of the discussion?
Not particularly.
Okay.
So this was just an item that was part of the March meeting, but we never really had a chance to discuss it. I know BFJ had sent over draft ordinances that were included in the last meeting packet. Subsequently to that, we poked around to see other towns, and if they have ordinances in place around here. Renee did find a couple, so I do have drafts if anyone wants to take a look. So Simsbury, Canton, and Windsor all have them in place. Really what it comes down to with the demolition delay ordinance is it's delaying demolition. If someone comes in for a building permit to demolish a structure, and depending upon the ordinance, there's different criteria, some it's structures over 50 years old, others it's if it's within a historic overlay, some it's both, so it really depends how it's set up. But it requires basically there to be a pause, you have to notice abutters. And really the intent, from what I can gather, is to allow folks, interested parties, an opportunity to perhaps come forward to purchase it or document a structure prior to demolition. So that's just a quick overview, I think, of how they work. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
The only place we found where you can get more, and it runs into, was New York City has what is commonly thought to be the most stringent laws on historic preservation. That is, after Penn Station was demolished, which was said to be, I never saw it, but it was said to be the most beautiful train station in America. I don't know that, but I know one thing. What they did is created, because we were part of the creation of the the zoning for Grand Central. And the Preservation Code, Landmarks Code in New York City, does allow you to preserve the building and including the inside, which is rare. They can landmark it in the inside of it. So to get something like that demolished, there was, there's a whole delay and process in it, and it's almost impossible in the city. However, they run up against the Fifth Amendment takings clause.
That's right.
So the city's been careful on that, and to the extent that there's a book out there, and this is just a little history of where the bluff was called, and it didn't work out so well. It was a book called His Honor and His Eminence, and it was Mayor Koch, this goes back. And I forget the Archbishop of, I think it was before Egan, I can't remember his name now. And the Landmarks Commission simply landmarked a church and said, well, to the Archdiocese, you'll have to spend the money to bring this up to our standards. To which the bishop just called the mayor and said, look, you can have it. You can have it, he said. And, the Landmarks Commission suddenly realized, well, wait a minute, this adds up to about $2.5 million, which is a lot of money in those days. And so they've been very careful about that type of, and I know legal counsel has been through that. I mean, there were Grand Central, by the way, went to the Supreme Court. And so there's a famous decision on it. There's also a famous footnote on it by the then Justice Rehnquist. So your legal counsel would have to be careful about how far you do go on, you can't.
But again, I'm going to go back, it's one aspect.
It's one aspect,
laying
right.
for a thoughtful approach, right?
Yes, for a
It would
thoughtful
have to be in concert with other.
Yes, yes.
These are ordinances or just part of the regs?
Ordinances.
They are ordinances.
Along, usually become with preservation ordinances as well.
I've got a comment. I'm not sure where along the process this ended up being the center of discussion. I'm not a fan. I think it's a slippery slope towards the amendments issue I don't believe we should restrict landowners' rights in this particular fashion. So I don't think this should have been introduced to the Setter study, and I wouldn't support this rec.
Well, by the way, I agree on that the demolition code would affect all historic properties in Granby, so I don't think it's a particular issue for Granby Center, but it did come up, so we tried to say, hey, this is what some other towns do.
I think, it came up because we want to preserve those historical
Yeah,
buildings,
the
so that's
historic
where
building, yeah.
it came from. But that's a
Yeah.
good point. Does anyone else have a comment on this for now? And we can always come back and explore it. No? Marty, you're good? Do we feel comfortable moving on to our next item on the agenda? Which is Abby's response to previous discussions and comments. You made a really good packet. Hopefully people had a chance to read it. But when the public gave comments last time, Abby went back and watched the video, and I also wrote it down. We collaborated to make sure that we're hitting on all of those, and you guys hit them too tonight. So some of them are a little more logistical.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, thanks, Meg. So I did prepare a memo that was in the commission's meeting packet, and the intent was to respond to some of the more pointed technical questions that came up at the last meeting that we weren't prepared to answer on the spot, but I felt was important to address and post so other folks can review. So I won't read through it because there's quite a lot of information in them, but the first does address the sewer question that came up. So just quick overview, we do have a 353,280 gallon per day allocation with Simsbury. As of to date, 265,280 gallons per day has been allocated. Our actual flow is much lower than that though, which indicates that some developments have not used up their allocation. And also, it's important to note that some of the projects that were allocated flow were still coming online and under construction too, when that number was put together. But regardless, we are under our capacity to Simsbury, so we do have some room there for additional flow. And the flow study is posted online as well as part of the WPCA packet, so folks can take a look at that to see where we are. And we are working with Ty and Bun currently on some additional sewer work. I also asked our town engineer to respond to some of the more technical questions about the stormwater management as it relates to Granby Center and the potential increase in impervious surface or coverage there and how that would be handled. So he did provide some additional information about that. And just I want to highlight, because there might have been some confusion. So all stormwater on site has to meet the deep stormwater requirements. It's handled, treated on site. It can't be directed directly into the sewer system. Those are separate systems, so stormwater is handled separately. And there's, some great measures folks can do for, groundwater infiltration on site, rain gardens, and other green techniques. So again, he included some information on that, as well as, what we use when we evaluate developments. So just want to point that out.
Thank you so much. I think that's really important to have available. It's come up a lot, and that's a lot of work, so thank you. Wonderful. Does anybody on the committee have any questions about that or comments for Addie? All right, thanks for that important work. Action items for the next meeting. I have BFJ really thinking through and writing down a framework on historical preservation and the components that go into that to have it be really successful. Also integrating center boundaries into your work for the public workshop. Did anyone else write anything down?
I would respectfully, relative to the engagement of people for the workshop, and I hate to go backwards to go forward, but I would ask that you revisit the stakeholder outreach that was done in February, because, and I asked Abby about it today, they're looking at the map of who you talk to, there are significant and important gaps that are missing of people that that need to be at the table that you did not talk to.
Okay. By the way, we have gotten, Abby knows this, we got a call like just this week, and someone said to us, well, they didn't get any notice. And Suzanne just checked and said, yeah, we sent you an email on this date.
And email is not sufficient notice for busy business owners, I'm sorry.
Well, what do we do? If we can't reach them by phone or email,
Well, we invited them to the workshop, and we also held other meetings for key property
Yeah.
owners,
Yeah.
There's some,
one-on-one meetings, yeah.
and I get all that, but
Yeah.
if the map is accurate, there's some holes there
Yeah.
that
Well, we'll-
represent
yeah.
things that are important.
Yeah,
Biggest medical office building in
Yeah, we can-
in the center. The commercial structure that features retail and office building that has a pretty decent occupancy rate. The longest standing business in the center of town, the longest serving bank in the center of town. Not on the list. So.
okay. Well, we'll
You
reach
got some
out.
work to do. I
There
think
are
it's important
some-
because
Yeah.
those are the voices that need to be at the public session.
Yeah, and also, we hope to
Oh, and the
invite
post
all of
office
them.
too, the biggest waste of space in
Yeah.
the center of town.
So for the public workshop, I'll address the property owner issue in a moment, but for the public workshop, just so everyone is aware of in terms of getting the word out. So it was posted on our website, an e-blast went out. It has been announced during our Development Commission and our Planning and Zoning Commission meetings. That is broadcast to the public as part of the town manager's report, so it's been communicated to the Board of Selectmen. I know the Chamber of Commerce picked it up too, so it's been posted on their website. I'll be working with Catherine on an additional email blast when it gets a little bit closer, as another reminder. And then this week I will also send direct notification to the email list of those property owners in the center, as well as follow up with the folks I know who came to the property owner meeting, and then the ones that you had subsequent conversations with as well. And
The
then,
timing's hard, right? It's like how far out and how to have people have it on their calendar,
Yeah.
but that they don't forget,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
I
to-
also
Yeah.
come
You don't
to
want to
the
inundate them, but at the same
flyer
time, you don't want to be that far
center
out.
We'll
It's
follow
hard to
up.
figure that.
Yeah, do you have it?
Chrysler
John,
system.
I'll talk to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we
'cause
could get a list.
If we can get John's list sort of, and if they have a phone number, we'll call them as well as email, we'll try to reach them. There are two that we have called,
Okay,
emailed a couple of times.
do we want to collaborate on?
We'll collaborate after,
Yeah.
yeah,
Is
good
there
idea.
anything else you want to address in terms of the property owners?
I mean, I think it was important that some of the key ones have been addressed, certainly. And, you know, certainly Mother's been to hear from everyone. I think
So-
especially some of the targeted properties. that
So
were
is this a
discussed.
case where they weren't on the original list and notified, or they were on it? So we kind of have to go back to the original list to see.
We shared that with Abby. I think that was actually from the tax assessor's office, right? Or where did the contact info for the property owners?
I mean, let's be honest, it's a fairly compact space for an afternoon and door to door. You could capture every single human being in the center.
Well,
It's
we
not
could
that
look
hard.
at the list and see if there's something missing and add it in and make it a more comprehensive list.
I'll
Yeah, so some of the
send you what I
properties-
observed.
Well, some of the owners of the property don't necessarily on the property.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so John, if you have the
I'll
list,
send
send it
it.
to me, and I'll,
And then we'll make a real effort, John.
Yep.
Close the gaps, yeah.
Does anyone have any comments before we wrap up this portion of our meeting? It's 8:40. Good job, everyone. What we are going to do is we held ourselves accountable to time as best we could, even though there's a lot to discuss, and we will also hold public comment accountable to time, but everyone's going to get 5 minutes. We'll give them their full 5 minutes. Eric, I see you have your phone. Can you make sure, so we're not looking at our phones, that it like beeps or something at 5 minutes? That way they hear it and we all know. I'm going to do the same thing and write down any questions I hear. And then I thought it worked for you to go back over the video as well. But if anyone else wants to write them down and send them to us, then we can compile it. So I'm going to start with the people that are here. Do you want to start? Does anyone want to start? Do you want to,
You could sit
do we
over
need a
here.
microphone? So can you come
sit
up
right
where the
over
mic is?
Good,
If you
Oh,
feel
we're here.
comfortable doing that. Thank you, John. And this is just so people on Zoom can hear you. And just state your name and your address.
My name is Joan Russell. It's 12 Brookside Drive in Granby. I also happen to be co-owner of 20 Hartford Avenue and 22 Hartford Avenue. And unfortunately, I'm one of the people that you did not get a chance to speak with. I don't know why. It could be my fault. I could have missed something. But I didn't have anyone stop into the store, nor did I have anyone try to call me. So just so you know. So I feel like I'm coming late to this game, and I feel bad about that, because I know you've done a lot of work, and I know you care about the outcome about this. As far as tonight's things go, I just have a couple of concerns. I think John helped us out a lot on the keeping the net amount of parking. And I have always felt that it was a great idea to make the parking area, if you looked at your eastern area, I thought the parking idea was by far the best idea. But I'm a little concerned about the placement of sidewalks on our property and the CVS property, and about the cut between CVS and our spot, and then CVS and and the post office. Excuse me. If,
Could you tell me, could you point out here where your
Sure.
property is? That'd be
Sure.
great. That's the one of the usefulnesses of the map.
just pull my back out. I'm sorry.
Oh, Jane, is it? Wait a minute, where am I?
You want-
Oh, this
Bad.
is- oh, yeah. Here's Hartford Avenue, Bears Den, CVS.
Okay, so we're here.
Yeah.
These two
Okay.
pieces of are our property. And I don't have to tell you that this is tight. This is not any news to you. I'm concerned that if you make these walking spaces they're going to be dangerous because people right now can't handle the fact that we're telling them to come in this way and go out that way. They come in this way, they do whatever they please. So it's difficult, I think it would be difficult to allow this to be walking space. This is a garden area that we put a sidewalk
You don't
into a
mind, I'm
long
just gonna
time
circle
ago.
it.
Sure. So we put a garden area in there a long time ago. That's why that spot's there. We park in this area, our personnel park in this area, and anyone who wants to avoid Hartford Avenue and just enter through this way, through Bank Street, will park in this area. So there's probably, on any given day, maybe 3 or 4 customers will park there, and anywhere from 5 to 8 of our people will
I
park there.
here because I don't.
Exactly, a lot of people.
I
And
park when I go to see you.
and a lot of people will come in this way, and then they'll exit out this way. So there's a lot of traffic between the buildings on any time, and that can be tight. And this area can also end up, like right now, if you go into this area right now, it's spring. There's about 8 pallets of assorted
Products.
exactly. Exactly mulch, whatever. That's taking up this spot. There's still room for somebody to drive through, but to have somebody walking through to hit sidewalks, and I'd be afraid. Here, you've got the pharmacy for CVS has a lot of traffic through here. It amazes me how much they get.
Drive-through.
So to have to have this be exiting right there at the drive-through makes me frightened. Over here, if you've ever been here after hours, this is where they park all the postal trucks.
No,
There's no
just that-
place else to do that. So if you cut in here and here, you're taking away basically their parking. So they're certainly not going to be able to put it down into this area because that's for their customers. So this concerns me. But I love the idea of this. And I'm just curious, I know my time's probably almost up.
No, it's okay. If you want to ask, that we can answer. You're good.
Well,
10 seconds.
Thanks. When you make a decision like that, when you say that's a good idea, how does that happen? I mean, that's not your property. So, just as with Gary's property over here, Kevorkian's, I mean, he's tried number of different times to develop that in ways that he wanted to develop it. So, I understand that it's a great idea and I love it. But I guess I don't understand how that can happen when it's not your property.
Basically, government of one type or another has to pay for it, either through a grant that they get from the state.
Get cooperation.
That's
This is nothing more than a vision for a future recommendation. It's up to the landowners to decide if they want to
Thank you.
cooperate.
That's right.
There's no going to be taking of land here, no usurping, no forcing. It's gotta. That's right. This is
Okay.
just quickly a
It's a
vision.
hopeful plan.
So we're trying to make some progress on cleaning up the center. So if the greater good felt that should be parking, there'd have to be adequate incentive for that to happen.
Like here, we did talk to there was this idea that was mentioned to us about some parking, bike racks. And so we talked to not the owner, the owner's rep for Geisler. And
Great.
he was at that meeting and I asked him specifically, is it okay for us to respond to that? He said, yes, go ahead.
Spring.
So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for your feedback. That's very helpful. And maybe setting up a meeting to discuss more since you're,
Yes,
it would be
yeah.
really nice.
And I guess I was uncertain when I've known John a long time, and we were discussing this earlier. How did you even decide who to talk to, and how did you get the information of how to get hold of them?
Well,
I
basically,
provided
we-
the contact
yeah,
information
We
off
worked
of
with Abby to try.
building permit information we had and other contacts.
So you wouldn't have my email address because you wouldn't have it.
No, we did have one
Did
for
you?
the hardware, yes.
Really?
Yep.
I can check if it's accurate contact info, yeah.
And
Maybe
of
it's
course,
changed.
you run into a problem where the owner of the business isn't necessarily the owner of the property.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
that can get touched.
John, could you?
Sure.
You were.
Sure.
Yeah, if you write it down, that'd be great. I am going to keep moving forward with public comment, but feel free to exchange information and take your time. All right. Would one of you like to come up and speak? No obligation, just if you want to.
Plead the fifth now. Thanks very much. Are you,
I'm done. I'm trying to remember where I cut my stuff. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
John Marone on Maple Hill Drive in Granby. I take it a lot of the real estate isn't owned by the town,
Almost all of it is owned privately.
correct? So those would have to be purchased, acquired, to do any of this, correct?
Well, in other words, the one that Joan just pointed out, this parking here, one of the things that we learned about more was a perceived need for some parking in the center of this. So we've suggested this, but as Eric just said, we're not proposing taking any property from people.
No, I know
This
that.
would have to be
I know.
paid for.
How did this,
Yeah.
you come up with a mixed-use idea. How did you come up with that?
We did a market study and of what,
What were your other selections? Because I don't want to waste time. What were your other choices besides mixed use, your top other?
no. We looked at market segments. How strong is retail as a market segment?
How strong is it?
Weak,
Terrible.
right. I wouldn't go to say terrible, but it is weak.
There is no retail.
Yeah, and so.
If you go to Bloomfield, all that mixed use, nothing on the
Yes.
first floor. If you go to Whole Foods in Avon, there's a mattress firm and the thing. If you go into Hartford.
We don't
on Park
disagree.
and,
I think we're on the same
On
page.
Main, there's
agree with
nothing
you.
there.
So the
If you go
retail
down
sector is
to
not,
West
yes.
Hartford and Trout Brook, there's nothing there. If you go to the corner of Flatbush and New Britain Avenue, 180 units, there's going to be nothing there. So why would people want to replicate that?
That's what we're trying to respond to. Let me try. The retail market, we're in agreement, is a weak market. It's not that it's not, in that market, there are some things that are.
Who do you envision going in there for retail?
Well, when you include restaurants in that retail as a
okay.
category.
What type of
Some
restaurant?
restaurants are doing well. Well, you have 4 restaurants down there now.
Yeah, but I mean, you're the
It's
person
possible
that's doing
to
that.
get another-
What do you envision as your envision?
Yeah, I'm sorry, this, well, let me finish on
Restaurants,
if I could, let me finish on the market.
Well, I don't want to go too far, because I
sorry.
have a couple minutes.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm going to ask
Yeah,
that.
go ahead.
lady,
Go ahead.
And
We listen.
we're going to listen so that we can keep time straight. And then if there's something we
Because
can answer, we will answer. Otherwise, we'll
Yeah,
have.
yeah,
I don't wanna
because
take
that's
your
why I'm
time.
trying to be a little more manic, because if you go into formatted answer, so what do you envision, I guess, for retail? Because you did select retail. What do you envision? What do you?
So we're going to
We're
have
gonna
you
take your
continue with
questions.
your
No,
questions.
I don't want to do that. I just want to answer it real quick. Do you envision anything or not? That's all I'm just asking. You don't have to answer.
Because retail is fairly weak, office is medium, not strong, it's not a great market. What's the strongest market is residential. So what would be the best way to get more life into the center and improve it? To do something that allows the market to have those choices, every
Why
corner.
would every little bit of residential how many people are in Granby? How many residents are in Granby? How many people live in Granby?
Yeah, 11,210.
Why do you need an extra 50 people in the center of town right there? To me, what's the uniqueness of Granby? I'll just spiel, you don't have to answer. What is the uniqueness of Granby? It's not Bloomfield, it's not Trout Brook Drive, it's not, I can name you 100 places. I can name them in Atlanta. I've sold real estate for 40 years, lots of it. And You ever go to Broad Street in Old Weathersfield? You ever go to Old
Yes, I
Weathersfield?
know Old Weathersfield.
That's what Granby should be. That's what you should make it. Go down there, all of you, take a trip down and get some lunch. Old Weathersfield and Granby. You don't need apartments, you don't need that. You don't need 8 miles of sidewalks. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres of walking trails, and even then, there's nobody on here. You think those people with 50 parking spaces are gonna come here and walk in a circle to see one apartment, to see one restaurant? They don't even go to the restaurants now. The only 2 restaurants next to Geisler's get some people, because that's the only restaurants in town. So you need uniqueness. Go to Old Weathersfield, not West Hartford Center. That's a whole different market. Go there. Use the buildings. Use that church. If you own that or buy it or whatever that building is next to CVS, make that a cool place. Add a structure. You don't need apartments. Give it character. Make it unique. Maybe you'll have to do this one house at a time or one purchase at a time.
Yeah, Rich,
Okay.
thank you.
Sorry, we were figuring out a technical
Also, if you
thing.
need somebody to reach somebody, I'm a door knocking realtor. I've sold over 1,000 homes. I'll knock on those doors if you like and get those people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you. Okay, Abby's phone does go off, so I'm gonna
Does
have
it?
her do
Yeah.
the timer. And I want to reiterate, we're gonna try to listen for that 5 minutes just to keep it straight so that we're giving them what they're entitled to.
Robert Flanagan, Woodcliff Drive. I just got a real quick question. When you were talking about demolition a little bit earlier, and that gentleman with the blue striped shirt held up ordinances, were those ordinances related to demo from the town of Granby? Were those state ordinances?
There are other town ordinances. It was for the town of Windsor, Canton, and Simsbury. The town
Well-
of Granby does not have a demolition delay ordinance.
Okay, the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I talked to Martha, who's on the Granby Historical Society, and of course, I like historical buildings, I think we all do. And she told me, and I did read a state protocol, which needs to be followed when any kind of alterations are done to a building. Unfortunately, the old print shop here in Granby is a different issue. It wasn't basically followed. But I just hope that that is brought into consideration. I know there's property owners that own these buildings, but I just think that should be brought into consideration. That's just my comment for now. When there is that public meeting next month, is there going to be another public where people can and overall speak about this total center study that you guys have completed? Will there be an opportunity?
There'll be additional meetings.
Yeah,
At which there'll be
absolutely.
public
Yeah.
comment.
Thank you.
Yep.
Public comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. No one else in the room, so we're going to move to Zoom. Okay, let's see. Flanagan. Okay. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Tony Flanagan, and I live at 24 Woodcliff as well. My question is, the mixed-use building that you're speaking of, that's the Bank of America building, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in order for that to be done, we'd obviously have to purchase it. We would probably have to knock it down because it's not built to have a floor above it to hold apartment buildings. The footings and whatnot are not built that way. On top of that, you want to put, I saw what, 140 units? Is that what you were looking to put up there as a mixed unit with businesses down below? Is that correct?
No.
Or is that, how many units were you looking to put above?
It's about 15 units.
About 15 units? Okay. Another thing is too, if you looked around town and you noticed in the plazas, both of them were Geisler's, and the other one next to, or across the road from Liberty Bank, those places aren't jumping with people jumping in to rent them. So you're correct, retail is dying. We have a medical building down the road, it's a dentist, he's got a floor upstairs that's for rent for medical. People aren't jumping in on that either. This town is completely out of the loop of Blueback Square and everything else. This is like our sleepy drive-through town. The problem with that is Parking will be an issue. Another thing is too, traffic will be an even worse issue. Even though they reconfigured the center study with the traffic flow, it's worse now. I've sat at the light on Route 20 going east, sat through 3 lights just to get through it. So that is still a nightmare. My problem is too, you sit there and you say, oh, it'll be mixed use for people who live there and people who work in the offices, but you never mentioned employee parking or handicap parking, just regular parking. And what I want to know is, what's the goal here? I would rather see the center green. I would love to see that beautified. That would be a good start. Going after these buildings and plazas that we don't own basically really is a waste of time. Because from what I've heard from people that, well, work for the people who own these buildings, they don't want to do anything. So how are we to sit there and say, we're going to do this, how about if you join us? They're not going to do it. So to me, this is pretty much a waste of time and money. But if you really want to do something nice, fix up the center green, put in more green area, make it user-friendly. That's how I see it. Also, I heard that you were talking about making a roof 48 feet tall, a proposed roof. Was that correct, on the building for Bank of America?
No, that we were talking about, what does the zoning allow for the total existing height of the building? The zoning, yeah, the zoning currently allows 45 feet. That's for the total
Correct.
building, yeah.
Right, because we don't have a ladder truck in case there's a fire and they have to get on the roof. We would have to rely on mutual aid, and by that time, the building's a total loss. Another thing that I just had was the, oh shoot. I'm sitting here holding a cat in one hand and trying to read with the other hand. With the sidewalks, because it's on a state highway, would the state have to approve of them to be put in along with the homeowner?
Yes, generally, yes. If it's on state property, they have to approve.
Okay. All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to Maureen.
I want to get around to talking about green space. Is there a specific criteria that you go by where maybe you get acreage or footage to identify it as green space? I've been in town 40 years and I've seen the center green space decrease dramatically. And, you know, with all these other proposed locations for green space, I think you're kind of missing the point on what the function is of a center green. There's not too much left of the green space where grassroots is. And now you're talking about eliminating 7 spaces at grassroots. And in the summertime, parking is overflowing there. Taking away 7 spaces and possibly putting them someplace else is really going to be a disservice to that business. Another comment I have, if you're talking about mixed development and housing, reserving only 1 spot for senior citizens really is a disservice to them. It kind of precludes them from having any visitors come to visit. Where are they going to park? Spaces will be allocated towards, you know, those who are residents and those who have additional spaces to accommodate guests. So in my mind, that's a form of discrimination. Another thing you mentioned was this town meeting that you're going to have where you're sitting at tables. I don't know what the feasibility is, but I know a lot of people have difficulty visualizing from maps if there's any way, I make the suggestion that you do prototypes as best you can once you finally decide on what your recommendation is. I think it's going to be more beneficial for people to have that visual 3D type of context in order to see what it is exactly that will be asked to vote on one way or the other. Let's see. The other thing is, I think we need to be mindful of the taxpayers and procuring easements or whatever negotiations goes on. It's going to directly impact residents in this town. And there was a lot of talk about the school population. When you reduce the number of children in schools, people automatically assume that the need for the educational budget will also decrease. That's not the case. So again, think about tax burden when you start making recommendations. I know you're not considering eminent domain, but putting pressure on property owners, and it all equates back to taxpayers. Thank you for your time.
Thank
Thank
you. And Fusick.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Mike Fusick, Northwoods Road, North Granby. I just want to thank the gentleman who spoke earlier and suggested a visit to somewhere such as Old Weathersfield, because I think he hit it right on the head when he identified Old Weathersfield as something that we should be looking to template versus what is being proposed. I have some questions this evening, and my questions are actually in response or regarding some of Abby's responses to some of the more technical items, I guess that we're calling them. Specifically, Abby stated the pump stations are not now nor are to be considered bottlenecks. And I would just hope that you could clarify that statement, considering time bond study references this capacity constraint identified at the Sandbrook Pump Station and beyond, and BFJ planning actually is where I quoted the bottleneck reference from, because it is a bottleneck, it's a limiting factor to what we will be able to do with the source system, unless it's upgraded, replaced, as well as approximately, I believe it's like 7,000 linear feet of 10 or 12-inch sewer main. So can you just clarify your comment where you say the pump stations are not now nor are be considered bottlenecks?
Yes, it was noted in my memo. I had the town engineer address those, so I will put you directly in touch with him and he can speak to you offline about that, and then we'll include his response in the next meeting, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, that's fine. I just was confusing because, with two consultants making the same statement.
Yep, I don't want to opine on the town engineer's comments. I would like him to address that with you.
That sounds
Okay, so these responses aren't formulated by yourself then? You said you were responding to my statement, so I assumed that when you said that it was something that you would agree.
No, so I said in the memo, I also asked that the town engineer respond to questions regarding stormwater management and sewer when applicable. His response is also below. So I responded to the first part of the sewer that's in the memo, and the town engineer handled what's under the stormwater heading, which I do realize, in response to your comments, handles some of the sewer items. So sorry if that was confusing.
Okay, so the next item, number 3, about stormwater impacting sanitary sewer systems. I just want to clarify that when I made the statement about stormwater impacting sanitary sewer systems, I'm fully aware and understand that stormwater and sump pumps and whatnot are not tied into sanitary. However, the idea is that the more impervious surface you create, the water has to flow somewhere. So if the idea is that all of these sites are going to have individual stormwater management systems, that's very, very troubling, considering, just managing that many different stormwater systems or overseeing that many, or relying on a private owner to do so is not best practice. I'm not sure what we have for stormwater infrastructure in the center as of now, but that certainly should be taken into account.
Yeah, again, I would like the town engineer to address that. When site developments come in, they do all design their stormwater management systems for their individual site. That has been the case with the recent developments in town. But again, I would like him to speak for that. He's the one who evaluates that and can better address your remarks than I can.
Okay, all right. I guess at the end of the day, I know that we're saying that sewer work at pump stations or, it's a totally separate item from future development and sewer shed, but it's kind of like a cart before the horse thing. How can we plan on doing something if we actually can't, the infrastructure portion of it, the infrastructure portion should actually be done first. That should be put foremost before we start, planning on developing, so.
Thank you for that.
And that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Am I missing anyone?
Nope.
On there? Okay. I will take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you for your hard work tonight. Thank you, all of you.
Yeah, thank you.